Everyone. I am Vida Klocke from North Dakota, USA. It's wonderful to be invited to do this today. I hope you enjoy my presentation. We're going to be doing a mountain scene with a little waterfall for interest. I think you probably all have a copy of that and the pattern, I'm hoping. I'm sorry that I can't make a more formal introduction, but my arm that I have my webcam attached to is very difficult to maneuver. So I want to keep it focused on what I'm doing. It's the most important thing here, I guess, today. More important than seeing me, I guess. So hopefully you were able to run off the line drawing that I sent to Suzanne. What I do when I begin a scene is I always find my horizon line. And before I do that, I always find the center of my piece. Now here, this was 7 inches deep, 7 3/4. So I halved it, and then I lay this graphed ruler on and mark my edges, and then I can make a definite horizontal horizon line. This would be actually the center of the piece. My horizon line is actually going to drop down below that center line, which is good. Your horizon line should either be above or below your center of interest, your center of your piece. So I went ahead and centered that, and then I placed my pattern. Any kind of transfer paper works, of course. I do like to use a red pen. This is one that if you apply heat to the pattern afterwards, it will take the red pen away. So anyway, this will let you know exactly where you traced, and you shouldn't have any doubt about what you missed, because that red pen should show it all. All right. So we are about to get started. I usually lightly dust my piece off with silk. I will use a lot of silk. And I also take saran wrap, plastic wrap, and cover part of my pattern as I go. Otherwise, I tend to lose it. So we'll get this straightened out here and do something like that. I'm going to go over the colors with you real quick. They are, if you want to jot these down, yellow brown number 2 or pecan, Copenhagen gray and black, yellow green or a chartreuse, antique or brown green, and dark green. As long as you have 3 values, that's the most important thing. And then lavender, water green, and bronze green. Okay, so those are my colors. I grind with open medium like mineral oil to about toothpaste consistency. I paint with a semi-open medium. My brushes, I use the Aquaflow flat shaders. I have several different brushes I'm going to show you as we go along, because I use those for textures and things. So, but I'll explain those as we go. Okay, so in this container, I have my painting medium, and this one I have orange oil and mineral oil mixed half and half, and that's what I use to do a soft wipeout. And then, of course, I have brush cleaner, odorless mineral spirits that I will use to do a harder, crisper wipeout. Okay, so let's get started. Now, on this mountain scene, got something up on my screen here. I'm not going to do my sky this time because I want my mountains to be crisp. So I want to be able to go back with and chisel out that background if I need to. So I will start by taking a larger brush. I'm trying to keep some of my paints in screen also, so that you can see how I load and what I do to my brush. I don't use much oil. I just use it to condition my brush mostly. So what I want to do is start out light to dark. So I will start out with maybe a little lavender. on the sunshine part of my mountain. I usually do about, excuse me, 11 o'clock light. So if the light were coming this way, maybe some of this side of the mountain would be a little lighter. I don't worry too much yet about spreading this out. Now I'm going to go into a little water green. I tend to get carried away on lavender, but I can always wash over that with another color. So what I'm basically doing is just blocking in the color, because these are colors that will be in my sky next time. Okay, so that was lavender, water green. Now I'll switch to a little bit smaller of a brush and go into my Copenhagen gray. And I'll put some sharp edges on that. If I can get it to, I put this on newspaper yesterday because it was too oily. And now it's not oily enough, so I have to work with it a little bit. All right, let's try that. Sometimes when you get too much oil in your paint, that's what you can do.
You can turn that off.
Turn this off.
Mhm.
Let me in. There you go. You're in here.
Am I back? Someone unmuted me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. 2 new people
Okay.
came on. Sorry.
Okay, we're good.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so now I'll go into
Fuck.
Am I back? All right. So now I use saran wrap a lot for texture. So I will go in and I'll turn this texture different directions. Okay, now I think I need to turn my light down just a little bit. This doesn't look very dark, but we'll bring that down a little bit. Now I'm going to use my wipeout tool and take off a few crisp edges, mostly at a diagonal. I try not to fuss too much. Try to get some light against the dark to get that contrast going. And I try not to play too much. So if I keep turning this, I should get different areas of texture. All right. I'm going to soften that buildup just a little bit. I'm going to move this over just a little. Does that help? And of course, I should bring this color all the way to the edge. And when the transfer paper fires away, we'll be able to see this better and make more areas of depth. If we want, we can wash on some other color. It'll be totally up to you. Okay, so I am coming down to the foothills here. I do have an area through here that I like to make a mist. So I am going to lay in some lavender horizontally, because these are foothills. So I'm bringing this lavender back behind the foothills somewhat. And I'll add a little water green to that. Mix it up a little bit. And then I use it's a makeup sponge that I wrap in silk with a rubber band, and I use that for a pouncer. So I'm going to soften this upper edge with that sponge. Got a little bit of lint going on here. So that leaves a misty edge to the base of the mountains. And it softens that edge that comes down. Next, we'll go into a couple of the little foothills here in the bottom, and we'll just do that with maybe some gray to start. Just breaks up that area a little bit. I have there's like 2 in here. You could put as many as you wanted. I can darken that a little bit so I have more to push back to. So I'll just take the edge of my brush, soften a highlight on that first foothill, and then take my brush and push another. And I would call that good. All right, so now we're coming down to the grouping of trees. I'm going to switch to yellow brown. So I do need to clean up a little bit of my tree area back here because I don't want it to get dirty. I don't want to have muddy trees back here. There's a little tiny row, if you look here. There's a small little row of background trees. I'm going to lay those in, and then I'm going to work myself forward. So I've done my background. I'm working up into my middle ground now. So one of the brushes I use for that is a Deerfoot stippler. These are synthetic, they're rigid. they work very well to do trees and bushes. So I'm going to go in with medium green. I don't want these trees to be too warm because I'm still in the background. So I'm going to go into my darker green just to give it some texture, because cool colors recede, warm colors come forward. So as we move forward in the painting, I will move to more warm colors. I'm going to put a little dark green along that edge and call that good. I think the more we play, the harder it gets. So if you just get in, get out. I'm cleaning my Deerfoot stippler and going into yellow brown. And when I drop this stippler, I don't drop it up into the tops of the trees. I drop the color towards the bottom so that it deposits more color there, so that the tops of my trees are a little lighter. Now I'll take that color and I'm not loading any more color now. I'm just kind of borrowing what I have and bringing that color up to those treetops. And remember, you're painting behind. You don't have to worry about your evergreens yet. We're coming up to that. And I'll take questions at the end, and then I'll move my camera so you can actually visit with me. Let's see, already I'm getting depth down at the bottom of those trees. Now I'll switch to pecan or yellow brown number 2, and I'm just going to lay this closer to the bottom. And then I want to create a few groupings of trees. So I'm going to go tap in light against dark. Let's do the lower part of the grouping first. And I'm going to work into light against dark, just as if you were painting lilacs or clusters. This is a cluster of trees. Okay, I'd say that's pretty good for now. I might take my wipeout tool, a chisel end, and do just a few little trunks here and there just to break it up a little. As I come closer to the foreground, I'm going to get a little more detail. All right, so am I back? Did I use medium on my stippler? Very, very little. Okay, so now we're coming down to this middle ground, but before I can bring this middle ground in, I have to get some water back in here so I can bring the edges, the shoreline up over the water. So let's go into water green. And I bring it somewhat past the shoreline. And then I'll go into the darker bronze green. If you can't find bronze green, I think you could maybe lighten some of your Russian green. Okay, so I've got dark on my edges. I'm going to smooth that somewhat. See, if I drop my brush in the middle, there's a brush mark. So I have to start from back here and pull across, smooth that out. But I do need some highlight going through there. So I'll just take my brush. I'm saving areas here for lavender next fire, because that's what's going to be in the sky and I want it reflected into the water. So I'd say that's okay for that. Let's go on to the meadow part here. And I'm going to switch to the lightest green. It seems a little harsh at first, but it'll be okay. Because we're going to put other colors over it. And then you'll see why I had to put the water in first. This light green can come on down a little further. Let's get this laid in so we can finish up the shore area there and go on to the trees. This is what artists call local color. It's what the composition's main color in that area is, which would be green. So I'm just laying in an area of local color. Okay, I'm going to switch now to medium green and add it along the shoreline here. Start building up some of that color. Now I'm going to switch to, I have hair brushes. I have a large and a small. They're also called comb brushes. In my small areas back here, I'll use my small hairbrush. Yes, I don't usually have to oil them, but I like to condition anyway to get them under control a little. I'll go into a little darkest green and I'll flick some grass areas up along that shoreline to get that anchored somewhat. A little bit under my evergreens, which are coming next. This will give your piece layers and interest. Now I have little rocks here. I'm going to clean those back somewhat because they're going to be gray with a little bit of yellow brown. Okay, that's about as far as I can go now without doing my trees. I have to get those done. So let's lay those in. I have filbert brushes that I use. They're synthetic also, and they're curved on the ends. I have a large and a small. I start out with the smaller one and then I go to a bigger one eventually. But I think one of the most important things I do is when I start, I lay in this trunk because we don't want any wonky trees. The wind's not blowing that hard, I hope. Antique green with a tiny bit of dark green. And I lay that filbert at the tip and tap, 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 tap. And you can leave space between the branches. That's always good too, because you can always fill them in next fire. So I'll tap on down. I'm going to switch to the bigger brush now to speed things up a little bit. So it's a combination of antique brown, or yes, antique brown greens, excuse me, and dark green. You want to think interesting outer edge. And some branches on evergreens go up, some go down. It all depends on your variety of your tree. So I always say, interesting outer edge. Think of a fat lady in a girdle, bulging here and bulging in and out. That's what you want. Interest. We don't want these to look like bristle brushes that are all perfectly lined up. Okay, I'm going to let that tree rest. I'm going to go on to the smaller tree here. And if you notice, these are all different heights. You have to think variety. And they don't stop at the mountaintop. They extend over. Overlap is good anytime that you're painting. Layering items, layering subjects. If I get too many branches looking the same, then I do a little twist. These are probably the most time-consuming subjects on this piece, other than the waterfall. Maybe that's a little time-consuming, but it's our focal area, so we do want to spend time there. Switch back to the bigger filbert. We don't have mountains here in North Dakota, so it's always fun to do different subjects. We're in the plains. Very, very flat. Very, very cold in the wintertime. I'm painting as fast as I can. I don't want to bore you too much here, but I do have to finish this part before I go on. I'm a one-man show here, so bear with me. I'm trying to look at the chats, but it's not easy to concentrate on the painting when I do that. So hopefully you, Suzanne, will let me know if it's something important that has to be answered right away. All right, now I'm coming down. I'm going to make this evergreen a little longer than the other. Now I need to push in some dark here to separate those trees. Darkest dark against lightest light. That'll help form that edge between the two trees. It's setting the other smaller tree back somewhat, and I'll do more of this next time. I'm going back to this edge. I'm going to cut out little areas for the trunk on each one. I'm going to stop and start so they don't all look the same. Next fire, I'll put some brown in here. I just don't want to get too many colors all at once. So I'll add that next time and it'll stay nice and crisp and clean. All right, so here comes the orange oil for a soft wipeout. I'm cleaning out my filbert. I'm gonna go into my orange oil, and that does a soft texture wipeout. It doesn't take it all the way back to the china. And so I'm laying out a few branches over top, giving it some texture, pushing, pulling, whatever it takes. Okay, let's move over here. Some of these wipeouts are going over that trunk, and that's okay. It creates some depth, so, and interest. Because as I'm coming closer here into the middle ground, like I said, I want more detail. Now, every artist or every teacher that you take a class from does things differently. So because I'm doing them in one way and your teacher does it another way, doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's what works for you. I didn't have a teacher. I started, took 5 or 6 lessons and then we moved. And so I never had a teacher. So everything I learned was out of books. And then we moved again and I got in with the guild, who had a teacher come in once a year. And that was kind of the extent of my classes, unfortunately. So I had to learn a lot through the books. Now we're so lucky we have the internet and Facebook, and the magazines are online. We're so fortunate to have all this information at our fingertips. All right, I think I have the branches. I'm happy with them so far. Okay, and I'll do more next fire also. Now I'm coming down closer to the waterfall. So there again, I need to lay that waterfall in.
You want me to get you to
Am I still on?
Yes.
Okay, good. I am putting Copenhagen gray on the waterfall. And I'm going to go into a little bit of water green, mix it up a little bit. And gray with a tiny bit of black as we come down for shadow down below. So that's Copenhagen in black. So when this video is posted, hopefully you can go on and paint this at your own time. I hope that you will. Here's my big brush. I'm going to come on down with more water green now. I think I'll stop right there with that. Okay, now it's time for the waterfall. Again, I have some weird brushes here again. These are like pointed brushes that I flatten out. I really work them to make them flat because I want them to lay flat as I pull this color down. I'm going to use a large and a small. And I'll start out with my orange oil to do a soft wipeout. So I'm going to come to the top of the waterfall and pull down. And I want these to be different, not all the same. And I'm really pressing that brush down hard on the paper towel because I want to get that color out of there. So I skip around a little bit so they don't all look exactly the same. So this is a soft wipeout. So I'll work my way to the other shoreline. Now I'm switching to the smaller pointed synthetic here and flattening it down. I'm going to go into my odorless mineral spirits now because I want a sharper wipeout. That was just a soft one with the oil, with the orange oil. So I've got it softened. And I'll push some stronger highlights just at the top. And I'm trying to vary them and leave a little bit of shadow there. Our minds want to make everything the same. So I have to concentrate on trying to make these different spaces a little more interesting. Now I'll take this brush from the side and do some sharp wipeouts against the dark. Bring it down to the foam here, which is going to happen in a minute. We have to create shadow behind this. All right. Now I need to come in here and create some texture like bubbles. So I'll bring a few that extend down a little bit and break that up. So it's not a perfect row. And if I thought I wanted a few streams coming down, I'd hold that brush on the edge, and I'd say that the waterfall is done. All right. Now when I look here, well, I have a rock. So I'm going to clean that back. It's kind of on the edge of that waterfall. So I want to either bring it above or below that waterfall line. Clean it back a little bit. Okay, we're coming down here. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my water in so I can finish up my banks. Water green. I decided to do a tile instead of the tray, so I didn't have to fight with the edge for a demonstration. It's a lot easier for me. Bronze green, now I'll tuck in along the edge. So I want to start building up a little depth there in shadows. It's such a pretty color. Now, if I were to lay my brush here and do this, I would get a brush mark. So I have to come from the other direction. As much as I want to, I'll do this if I have to, but I can't drop my brush there in the middle. All right, clean back. I have to have room for my lavender next fire. All right, I'm going to leave that. And we're coming on down now. Let's lay in some light green for our base color. There's a couple rocks over here. So now it's just a little detail. So I laid that in with my lightest green. Going to go to my smaller comb brush now. Start laying in some medium value brown green, antique green. I don't want to get too dark right away. Whether I like it or not, I'm going to have to put the rocks in now. Clean them back somewhat. I'll go to a smaller square shader and I'll lay in gray. And to that, I will add a little yellow brown. I'm going to need to cut some highlights now. Just edgy little marks. The harder I think about making rocks, the harder it gets. So I try not to think too hard about it. And of course, I'll soften these edges somewhat. And next fire will add a little more depth to them. I've got so many brushes going here, I don't know where they're all at. I just don't want to get too dark on my first fire. Then I'll take the square shader and I'll go into the darkest green and I'll lay in front of the rocks and along the shoreline. Start building some depth here. I'm just tapping it in mostly. Okay, now back to the hairbrush. I'm going to use the big one this time. I'm going to start making rows with medium green. I'm pulling up from the bottom. Now they'll get longer and taller as they get closer to you, of course. I'll tap in a little black green at the base. Okay, now I'll clean my brush with Terp or odorless mineral spirits because I want to switch to yellow brown. I want to get some warm colors in here yet. So I'm loading that brush on both sides. I know I want this to be yellow brown. I have more space on my other tile than I do here, so I'm not going to have as much area for this. Maybe I'll put something a little warmer right through here. And of course, I need to echo that color on this side a little bit more. So bring a little of the yellow brown over there. Now I'll go into Pecan Yellow Brown number 2 and bring some shadows up. I think I want to bring this edge down a little bit more, so I'm going to go into some light green here. See what that looks like, because I have a different kind of edge here. Bring a few weeds up. It's hard to see with the lighting, I think, on this edge, but kind of brings your eye back around. I need a little highlight on some of those. I don't want to lose all that light, so I want to save some of it. And I will darken under the evergreens next time. It's just hard to see where we're at because of the tracing, so I'll know more where to lay those. I think my rocks look okay. A little pale, but we'll darken them up. Take my wipeout tool now. Along this shoreline, I like to grab a straight edge and pull for some reflection. Reflected light a little. And I'll probably cover that with some water, color of the water next time if it's too much. We have a fine wipeout tool that works too for doing a little detail. When I do this, I try to think, well, the wind might be blowing a little bit, so I might curve some of them, not too much, just enough to tell the viewer that maybe the wind is blowing today, or it's a little breezy. So I think, wow, we're just about on the hour. That surprises me. I would fire this at 016. I like my first fires quite warm, quite hot, because I don't want to have to worry about a chipping issue. I think I'm going to bring a little green up on that corner. I don't want to stop at the same place, so I don't want those edges to line up. So I might stop right there. Now I'm getting to the point where I'm going to overwork it. I need to quit. So I think that's a very good stopping point. I hope you're all still with me.
Oh, yes, we're still here. It's absolutely beautiful.
Okay, can I switch my camera real quick for questions and that, or?
Yes, if someone would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, as soon as Vida gets settled with the arrangements of her piece, you're welcome to ask her a question. Someone was asking about the size of a piece, whether it was good to start large or small on the landscape, or does the size of the piece matter when you're trying to learn landscape?
Okay, oh, okay. There we go. I don't know. I think smaller probably is better. You have a little more control over what you're doing. I guess what I did mostly starting out was ornaments, so I guess that works a little easier. So I'd probably start small, 5x7 or whatever. Definitely this tray with that ornate edge was not the easiest piece to to soften. We had to hold that to the end, and then we did it as a classroom project, and we had to do a lot of padding before we put it in the fire. Okay, does that make sense? Was there any other questions? I'm seeing some more up on the chat here.
Thank you, Vida. That was a great presentation.
Oh, well, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Good, good. I hope that you show up for Second Fire. I
Definitely.
did a little enameling on Second Fire on the mountaintops and the waterfall. So I can show you that too next time. So hopefully we'll see you on the 8th. And maybe you'll have time to paint this before that. That'd be great.
Well, Vida, we want to thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
It
you
was
very
a
much.
beautiful presentation, and we are looking forward to trying it here at home, and looking forward to seeing how to finish it up with your Second Fire presentation on November the 8th. Again, thanks everyone for tuning in, so to speak, and we'll see you soon. Zooming is
Okay.
fun.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.